Good morning. Our opening words are from Do Birds Enjoy Singing? An ornitho-philosophical discourse by Charles Hartshorne. In my religion, to serve God is to make one's contribution to the beauty of the world as a spectacle for God's enjoyment. Long ago, theology fell into a conceptual trap, the name of which is omnipotence. This is the pseudo-idea of one decision maker whose decisions settle everything. Result? The so-called problem of evil. It is really the problem of bad theology. If God decides everything, why does God not decide that we should all be happy? There is no good answer to a question so poorly phrased. If God decides everything, what do we decide? And if nothing, then how does the word decide have a human meaning? According to what is called process theology, every creature, every moment decides something that God does not decide for it. Living is deciding. Life is a process of turning a partly open future into a definite past. So the study of birdsong is, for me, a window into reality. A bird with a repertoire of songs has to decide which one to sing next. It is not God's business to make such decisions.
Beautiful day today. Okay, this reading is from Choose to Bless the World by Reverend Dr. Rebecca Ann Parker, 1997. I first met the process theologian Charles Hartshorne when I was a graduate student. I was assigned to help Charles's wife, Dorothy, catalog his papers. One afternoon, Charles and I took a break from our cataloging to go birdwatching. That is when I discovered that Charles did not drive. I sympathetically asked the 86-year-old Charles, when did you have to give up driving? He paused to think for a minute and completing his mental calculations said, I'd say about 43 years ago. He saw my surprise and explained, I could see the environmental damage that would result from too many automobiles and resolved to use public transportation or walk. Years later, I was at an academic conference in which process thought was being roundly criticized. The enthusiastic attacker was detailing the failings of process theologians. They were heady and abstract and gave no attention to practical ethics or social justice. I asked if the critic drove a car. His argument couldn't stand up in the face of Hartshorne's relinquishment of the automobile. Charles Hartshorne and Alfred North Whitehead have pursued a different course from the dominant stream of dualistic Western philosophy. Instead of splitting mind and matter, process thought reconceives matter as process or activity. It does so partly under the influence of post-Newtonian physics, which has gone beyond the notion that the material world is built up of aggregates of tiny pieces of matter, atoms. Okay, now just hold on. Okay. Science, I'm like, oh no. But post-Newtonian physics does possess an atomic understanding of reality, but the atoms are not bits of matter, they are tiny events. The closer you look, the more material seems like dance patterns, waltzes and tangos of quantums and quarks. Now I need to interject here. A few years ago, I found out that quarks can travel through lead. And that kind of just went, for some reason, that just blew me away. And I like to think about quarks. Our own old physical notion of matter is gone, And without one partner in the mind-matter dualism, the other partner can't be conceived of in the same way. Without the old material world to house it, the notion of spirit as a distinct, separate reality disappears too. Mind or spirit cannot escape from the material world because there is no material world to escape from. Process metaphysics conceives afresh the basic character of reality. Picture the universe like Indra's net, an image from Hinduism. Indra's net is an interconnected web of countless strands, and at every intersection there is a jewel drop of water that reflects the whole. Process philosophy sees the universe as the plenitude of these jewel drops, each holding the whole in precisely the way the whole is reflected at the point of intersection. If we look microcosmically into each jewel drop, into what Whitehead calls an actual occasion, we see that the jewel drop is a moment of subjectivity, alive with feeling. The whole universe is flowing into that moment, which exists as a vessel of receptivity to all that is. I'm just like, oh my God. The universe is emerging every moment by the action of countless creators, co-creating in response to one another. The creators range in complexity and depth, from the simplest series of quarks that manifests as an alternating pulse in an atomic dance, to a moment in the interstices of your brain when all the actual occasions that comprise your body spark as conscious awareness, to a moment within the fullness of the whole universe when everything is held together in such utter completeness that the moment deserves the name of divine source or multi-galactic consciousness. This worldview in which God or divine source, quarks, and a moment of your conscious awareness are all examples of the same process, variations of the same fundamental act of being/becoming, goes beyond the dualism of the Western philosophical tradition. In doing so, it opens up fresh possibilities for imagining the divine source or multi-galactic consciousness and our relationship to the world.
So this is the stole that my mother gave me for my ordination. The stole is a symbol of being an ordained minister in our Unitarian Universalist tradition. And alongside symbols from diverse religious traditions and our UU chalice, my mother made sure that the artist included this great blue heron. I also have a heron with me here on my arm. These birds have been with me all my life. When my family went to church camp at Samish Island campgrounds while I was still in preschool, we would walk in the whitewashed forest, a heron rookery that got its name for good reason. My partner and I have watched herons hunting along the Cedar River in Renton and as far down south as the Siltcoos River near Florence, Oregon. Herons are wild, amazing, awe-inspiring creatures to me, and they sound like something absolutely out of this world. Have you ever heard one? I can't do it justice. Look it up. Really, out of this world. So when I was a kid, it was sort of scientifically titillating to suggest that birds were descendants of dinosaurs, but the idea wasn't taken very seriously by the scientific community. There was relationship there, a common ancestor, of course, but birds as the sole survivors of the asteroid impact that ended hundreds of millions of years in which dinosaurs were the dominant forms of life on land, that was a little fun bit of science fiction. Although I thought that little Alison liked dinosaurs a normal amount, hearing from the now elders who were the adults in my life when I was a child, it sounds like maybe they could have caught the autism a little earlier. But my inner child is awfully smug about how that fun little story about maybe birds are the direct descendants of dinosaurs, that's real. Scientists now acknowledge that birds are dinosaurs. Our backyard chicken flock gave me a window into these creatures just as much as the herons have. The dinosaurs, whose bodies power our cars, whose bones have planted the seeds of monsters in our human imagination, they are still with us today. And my friends, so far we humans are just a very small, very brief visitors on a dinosaur planet. Dinosaurs originated about 230 million years ago. The comparable taxonomical category to dinosaurs that includes modern-day humans, hominini, that class originated only 7 million years ago. So dinosaurs, 230 million. Our closest group of ancestors, only 7 million years. The birds were here before us. Their presence has shaped our human evolution and our experience of the world. I turn to the birds as my wise and ancient teachers. I listen and watch closely to see what they have to show me. In doing so, I am actually supporting my own well-being, which I was delighted to learn on a 2018 episode of NPR's Hidden Brain podcast called Our Better Nature: How the Great Outdoors Can Improve Your Life. Turns out, our connection with the more than human world is actually vital for mental and physical well-being. This isn't surprising when you think about it. Humans did not evolve living in human-made structures apart from the more than human world. It makes sense that we would function best surrounded by the sights and sounds of the living earth in which our ancestors were embedded for millennia. Even just a patch of grass and a tree outside a housing project can reduce crime and improve mental health. Even just listening to recorded nature sounds has measurable mental and physiological health benefits. My friends, what does this say about our European American culture that has globalized through violent colonization only to eliminate the plants and the animals from our daily lives and then call it progress? So after hearing this episode of The Hidden Brain, I found the collection of natural soundscapes available for free at gratefulness.org, where our birdsong tracks have been drawn from this morning. I began to listen to those as I studied or worked to get my nature medicine. Then one day, during the COVID shutdown, I came outside for some reason after I had been sitting indoors, studying, listening to my recorded nature sounds. Stepped outside and I heard the wind rustle in the trees. I heard a sparrow start to sing in the bush, and another one responded. And I thought, what am I doing sitting inside listening to these audio recordings of birds when I could just come out and hear them in my own yard? So that's what I've been doing ever since. When we moved to Des Moines, we were blessed to end up with a woodsy creek for a next-door neighbor. And when the weather is nice, I take my computer out on the deck, plug it in, and work out there in the tree canopy that is alive with birds. Sometimes the herons or the eagles pass over, but most often it's a collection of little brown birds, crows, hummingbirds. All those days of my life that I looked longingly out the window at school or work, wishing I could be outdoors, turns out I knew exactly what my mind, body and spirit needed, but the culture I lived in denied those needs. I am so grateful that the work I do now I can often take outside. I'm so grateful that when we come here to worship, our eyes are offered this beautiful green space full of our more than human kin. If you get nothing else out of coming to church on Sunday, walking through the grounds on your way to the main building, looking out the window during the service, this is treating your body's nature deficit at least once a week. Even that would be enough. Dayenu, as they say in the Jewish tradition. So at about 5 this morning, I was laying in my bed doing my morning mantra practice, and there was a bird singing outside my window. First, it seemed like the same song over and over. But as I lay in meditation, I began to notice that that wasn't the case. Sometimes certain phrases got extra little twittering flourishes, or a stanza would get a different number of repetitions. The bird was doing variations on a theme, not some monotonous repetition. I could not guess how the bird would sing the song next. How many European and US bird scientists had heard the variety in bird song before Charles Hartshorne, and how many had still refused to ascribe choice or pleasure to the birds in their singing because of the myth of human uniqueness and superiority? European thinkers and scientists have been very interested for a long time in insisting that there is a hierarchy of life, that we are up here and animals are down there. We are the only animals, they would tell us, that do things like make conscious choices or use tools, communicate with symbolic language, or honor our beloved dead. This is that mind-matter dichotomy that Parker's reading spoke about. We've wanted to believe that our big fancy human brains make us so different than the animals. Hartshorne knew he was treading on dangerous ground as a mid-20th century scientist, suggesting that birds might experience joy and make aesthetic choices in their songs. But then he went bigger, arguing that aesthetic values, the valuing of beauty, is actually more universal, one of the most universal values, extending well beyond human beings, and that doing our part to create the most beautiful world possible is the way that we serve the divine, who, like me, delighting in the bird song this morning, doesn't know what choices we little critters are going to make, but is moved to joy when we do something beautiful in our own unique ways. In process theology, your art matters a lot. And one of your arts is how you live your life. Each choice you make is your prayer, your co-creation with the divine. Charles Hartshorne's choice not to contribute to global warming by driving a car, it didn't stop global climate change. But his choice inspired Reverend Dr. Parker, and it inspired me and Hartshorne's own God, who wants to see us choose the flourishing of all life rather than destroying our own ability to live on this planet that we are just borrowing from the dinosaurs. Science continues to break down our ideas of human superiority and uniqueness as we see bears and cows and insects using tools, orca mothers, our beloved Salish Sea carrying their dead babies with them for days. Other whales exhibiting interspecies cooperation and calling each other by name. In April, we are embracing possibility. And I want to ask you today to embrace the possibility that there is no hierarchy of life. Just a whole bunch of both diversity and oneness that enriches our world as we co-create together. I want to ask you to consider the idea that the interdependent web means that you are a tiny reflection of the whole universe, and the universe is transformed by your presence in it. You are that important. You matter so much. In process theology, I see from a different angle the absolute oneness of all things, the interdependent co-arising I've been learning about in my studies of Buddhism. As Unitarian Universalists, we value transformation, and we see that ongoing transformation in the changing conclusions of science as we learn more over time, in the evolution of species on the shifting continents of Earth. And this value of transformation is at the heart of process theology, because we become co-creators with a divine that delights in our creation, that moves us toward the aesthetic beauty of a world where love is at the center. May we, like the birds, choose to sing for the beauty of our songs, not only with our voices, but also with our whole lives. May it be so.